And it goes a little something like.
I'll keep love you warm all summer, and after fall, I'll keep you warm all summer.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm doing an interview with Dave Sielschott. Dave played Lima Bath back in the 70s?
70s, yeah.
Late 70s. So we're going to ask him 3 segments of football questions, life questions, and then just an overall conclusion of like his life after football. So, start with football questions. So, I know we're here for football, but what was your favorite sport to play?
Well, I played baseball in high school as well as football. Played baseball my first 3 years, and basically my favorite sport was whatever was in season at the time. So when I was playing football, it was football. When I was playing baseball, it was baseball. I was pretty terrible at basketball, so that one didn't. I never really played beyond elementary in basketball.
I guess. That's lovely. So what offense did Bath run back in your day?
Up to my junior year, we ran the I, and then my senior year, we switched to the wishbone. We had a new coach come in from Arlington, wishbone town, and so he kind of switched us. But we didn't run the option very much. We kind of ran a lot of I-type plays, second man through, that kind of thing, with the wishbone.
What defense did Bath run?
We ran a 5-2. The defensive ends were up on the line. They were in an up position, but they were up on the line of scrimmage, so in 5-2 as opposed to a 3-4, like if those guys were linebackers. But they were more defensive ends, more contain and pass rush individuals.
Good. What was your most memorable game?
Well, I had 2.
Okay.
The first one was Elida. Elida was our biggest rival, and at the time we played them, we both had 1 loss. And we basically dominated them. We killed them on their own field too, which is a very satisfying thing if you're a Bath. That was a lot of fun. Yeah. One of the things I remember about that game was that Elida had a quick middle guard, but he would pick a side every time, and he was creating havoc in our backfield because they ran a 5-2 as well, and he would loop around the center. And so what our coach started to do was call quarterback sneaks, and basically we would wedge block it, the 2 offensive guards in the center, which created an automatic double team on the looping middle guard, and the quarterback would just go the opposite direction. And in the Lima News, they talked about us averaging 5 yards a play on quarterback sneaks. So that was kind of fun. Then when he started saying staying home, and he had to do that, or we would have just kept running them all night long. Our center was all city, and he owned him after that.
Love to hear it.
Yeah.
So give me like your home game routine, starting with the school day all the way up to like kickoff.
Okay. It was kind of a different thing. We wore shirts and ties to school back then, but our new coach, as a senior, Coach Steve Basinger, did not believe in going home after school. So we would stay at school, and we would go to the gym, and they would have projector screens set up there, and we'd watch NFL highlight films. So you could either watch the highlight films, or you could take a nap or whatever. And then we would get on a bus, and we would go to the Ponderosa Steakhouse, and everyone would get a small steak and a potato and a salad and a drink. And we would eat there, and then we go back to the school, hang out and digest a little bit, and then we would go to the stadium locker room, and we would get dressed for the game and taped and stuff. As far as the pregame, the skill people went out first, and they were punting and throwing passes and things like that, and the linemen would stay inside, and we would wait for that part of the pregame to happen. And then it seemed like a long time. I'm sure it wasn't, but then we would go out, do our stretching drills, things like that. come back in, and then the band would form a tunnel, and they would introduce the offense or the defense, depending upon whose turn it was, and then we were ready to play.
So, 2 questions based on what you said. During a home game, a school bus took you to a restaurant before a game.
Yeah.
That's sweet. I wish we would have done that. And then second thing, so like for pregame with the receivers and quarterbacks going out, even though you were like strictly like run heavy, wishbone eye formation, like did you guys throw it quite a bit or not really? Or like did you guys practice a lot of passes, or is it more just like power right, power left, dive right, dive left kind of stuff?
Well, let's put it this way: our leading receiver was our tight end. Okay,
Oh,
so
okay.
we would pass, but we would not pass to. That was one that made it a really neat contrast with our big rivals in Elida, was that they ran the run and shoot. They filled the air with footballs all the time. We put our nastiest people on defense, basically, which you can say that maybe that's why I played offense. I don't know, but it was fun. We would throw the ball when we had to, but we had to kind of get back into it. That second favorite game was the last one. I didn't mention that was Defiance. Defiance was the 10th game of the season, and we kicked a field goal with 21 seconds to beat them and win the conference championship, because that same night Elida upset Wapak. Wapakoneta had 1 tie going into that game, and we had 1 loss in the league. And so when Elida beat them, they had a loss and a tie, and we had a loss, so we won the league in the 10th week. So that was exciting. The guy I was blocking outweighed me by 40 pounds. He wasn't as well coached as a lot of the guys I played against, but when we got into that last drive where we were going to throw the ball on every down, he didn't need a whole lot of coaching to know where he was supposed to go. So yeah.
That's cool though. That's cool. So what's the difference between like the away game routine then?
The away game routine was basically the same, except that you didn't have as much time to hang out in the gym watching films and stuff, because you had the away trip in the Western Buckeye League where we played. Our furthest away game was probably Salina, which is close to an hour away, 45 minutes or so away. So Van Wert was another one that's quite a ways away. So we just didn't have as much time, but everything else was the same. We still got our meal and stuff.
That's wild. So when was the time in football you faced adversity and overcame it?
When I was a junior, we were 9-0-1, and we won the first conference championship in the history of the school. I played JV offensive guard behind a senior who was much bigger, and he was good. But by the middle of the season, I was ready mentally and physically to play varsity football. I needed to turn a corner to do that, but I was successfully did that, and I was ready to go. But no one's going to make a change in an undefeated team. So what happened was then at the end of the year, I was penciled in at the starting offensive left guard for the following season. But the head coach, Mike Snyder, took the job at Defiance College. So when Steve Basinger came in from Arlington, his first judgment was that I wasn't big enough to play in that conference on the line. So the first 2 games, someone else started. And halfway through this second game, they made the change. And I didn't know it, but my offensive line coach, a man named Dan Wakefield, one of those guys that God drops into your life when you really need him. Dan had been lobbying for me. And anyway, I ended up playing the rest of the season. So I started the last 8 games. But that was a really disappointing thing, because I spent the winter working very hard, trying to get strong, trying to get ready for what I knew was coming, a chance to play. And when it looked like I wasn't going to get that chance to play, that was very, very difficult adversity to overcome. I'm very thankful for Coach Basinger being willing to make changes, and it helped turn my senior year into something really special, as when it could have been a big disappointment. But that was overcoming a major adversity.
Yeah, for sure. What was the town's response to winning the conference?
Well, that's kind of interesting because the previous year, of course, we were undefeated and won the conference. So the expectations were high going into the following year. So when we lost our first 2 games, and one of them was a league game, the town was very disappointed. But the reaction on week 10, when we won the conference, was really magic. The band was out there playing, the fans went on the field. I jumped in Coach Wakefield's arms because I was really pumped. It was a lot of fun, and so the town's reaction to the second conference championship was amazing. It was something that's worth remembering. So it went from disappointment to excitement and happiness in 8 weeks. So that was kind of cool.
That's awesome. What was your individual victory from winning the conference with your team?
Individual victories. The toughest guy I ever blocked was a down defensive tackle, but he was over the guard, outside eye of the guard. He from Salina. Salina also had one loss when we played them, and that was in week 9. They were very good, and we won 10-7. But this guy was a beast. It was a war from the get-go, and I went home with a victory, but I went home with a big headache too. This guy was good. So it was a personal victory, winning that game, and of course the guy that was 6'3" and outweighed me by 40 pounds, and from Defiance, I can remember thinking, man, I've never hit anybody that hard and had a good comment. I mean and I'm thinking, throw the ball, Greg. Greg, throw the ball. And I know in that drive, we made at least one 4th down conversion. I don't know how many, but that was a personal thing and a team thing at the same time. Another accomplishment was we had this thing called the 110% Club, and we had stickers that you put on the helmet. The offense had little footballs, and the defense had skulls and crossbones because they were the defense.
Yeah.
But the coaches would grade the films, and they would award these stickers based upon individual achievement and team goals. And if you got, I forget how many, 15 or something, then you got into the 110% Club and you got a t-shirt. But that was quite an accomplishment, considering that at the beginning of the season I wasn't a starter, and by the end of the season I was in that club. So that was a personal accomplishment.
That's awesome. Who was a notable player that you played with? It could be an absolute stud or someone that you think never got recognition that you think deserved it.
The best football player I ever played with is a guy named Rick Morrison. There were a lot of good players on that team. A lot of all-conference, there were a couple all-Northwest Ohio, a couple all-city players. But Rick went on to play in college, and he said his senior year at Bath, he set an interception record that lasted for years. And then he went on to play at Ball State University, and in his junior year at Ball State, he led the nation in receiving as a wide receiver. So also, Rick went to a football clinic the summer before and learned how to kick soccer style, because everybody up till that point, this was 1974, was a straight ahead kicker, and he learned how to kick soccer style. And the last 2 wins, the 10-7 win over Salina and the 17-15 win over Defiance, were both due to Rick's toe more. But he was the best football player I ever saw. The guy was amazing.
When you played your last snap and the clock hit 0, what was going through your head?
But that's a hard question, because at the time, they say don't, leave it all on the field. I did. So for my first thing is I was exhausted, and I was just really tired. I was really happy and excited because everybody was on the field, and it was just a wonderful feeling. It didn't really hit me that it was over until I went into the locker room, and I was sitting in front of my locker and just kind of thinking. And I look over, and there's a good friend of mine who played defensive tackle, and he's sitting there crying because it was over. And he came from a long line of players in his family, they all wore the same number, and he was the last one. He was the youngest, but he was sitting in there crying because he knew it was over. And I was sitting there thinking, gosh, yeah, it is, you know. And Coach Basinger came over and he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, well, Davey, we got everything out of you that you had in you, I think. And over the years, I'm thinking, well, that was a pretty good compliment when you think about it. I didn't quite know how to take it at the time. But, you know, the thing about football at the end is, you know, if I'm a baseball player and I want to go play softball somewhere, that's available. Industrial League basketball is available, you know. If you're a track guy, you can go out and run 5Ks or 10Ks or something like that. But once you hang up that helmet, there really isn't anything like it to replace it with. It's kind of over. And so, you know, it took a while to sink in, but I think I did miss it after a while, after I healed up, got rested up. But yeah.
So what you're saying, like, so you won the conference. Can you explain like your era of like how to make the playoffs and like why you didn't make the playoffs even though you won your conference?
Yeah. At the time, there were 3 divisions. They called them A, AAA, and AA. We were AA, the middle-sized school, and they had 4 regions, and they had 1 team from each region. So there were a total of 12 teams statewide that made the playoffs. Now, even in our undefeated season the year before, we did not make the playoffs. And part of the reason was that there were teams out there that were roughly the same size as our team that had played independent schedules. So if you play in a 10-team league like Bath did, then after week 1, every team on your schedule, half of them are going to lose because they're all playing each other. So to try to get enough points to get in the playoffs when there's that few of positions made it unlikely that you were going to make it even if you were undefeated. Because at the time, a tie counted as a win. So the previous year, we would have had a 10-0 record according to the computer, and we still didn't make it.
Was there like any hope at all for making the playoffs, or you kind of just knew it's like, yeah, it's done? Like, did your coach have any hope at all?
We knew it was done. We knew this was our last game. The good thing about it is you go out a winner.
That's true.
You don't have to win a state title to do that.
I mean, that really is your state title. You know, that's a big deal to you guys.
Yeah, it was a big deal.
So, is there like still like a trophy or like some sort of like remembrance of like your guys' team like in the school at all? Do you know?
I'm sure the trophy's in the trophy case somewhere. Yeah, it's in there. That would have been 1974, and of course the previous year was 1973. There was a guy that graduated a year before me who had some reunions for a while down there for the 73 group, and I would go down and see those guys and shake hands with the coaches and stuff, but I haven't been down there in a while.
All right, so now we're transitioning into a couple of just like life questions to get to know Dave. Previously, I already talked about him, or you read it, either one, whatever one I choose to pick for the video. But just first question, who is Dave Sielschott as a person?
Well, I'm a child of God. I've been blessed beyond what I deserve by Jesus. He saved me, and I've had a pretty remarkable life. I had a career as an engineer and a supervisor. I have a wonderful wife and family. I've been able to do a lot of different things. You know, I played trombone, I coached baseball, I wrote books, worked with a lot of kids and scouts and Sunday school youth groups, things like that. So I've been truly blessed, and so I think that I owe God everything that I have, and I'm mainly that. And I'm happy to say that God has accepted me into His family. So that's pretty much it.
So when was a time in life that you faced adversity, and what was something you learned from football that helped you overcome that obstacle?
When I graduated from high school, I decided I wanted to be an engineer, and I went to Ohio Northern University to do that. And you know, you found out from moving from high school to college that you can be the best in high school, and you get to college, you're trying to make the team, right? So in in academics and engineering, it's like that. I graduated near the top of my class in high school. When I got to college, I found out nearly everyone had done that, and it was really, really hard. What I learned from football is that if you work hard and you're determined, that you can overcome a lot of things. And I overcame how hard it was to be successful with an engineering curriculum and still graduate and get a good job and have a good career in it. So I think the work ethic that I helped develop in football helped me a lot in college.
And then, what has football just taught you about life?
A lot of things, like one of the things that's a lot more fun becoming a champion than being one. Live today, live where you are today, because you can say, well, I'm the champion of the Western, but like, oh, so what, but the work and the fun and the comradeship and the games, getting there was what was special. Another thing I learned was that really good football coaches are really rare. The staff that we had at Bath was an outstanding group, and as I've did a little scouting in football and watched a lot of football over the years, I've noticed that coaches that are that good are really rare, and those guys work really hard to get their guys prepared and to do well. And so I feel blessed that I was able to play for a really good coaching staff. And without them, obviously, we wouldn't have been successful. So that was another thing. Football is a great place to, I guess that another thing you learn is that, you can't control the whole game. You can't control everything that's happening. What you can control is where you are and what you do. You can do your part, and then you have to have faith in your own skills and your own determination, but you also have to have faith in your brothers that are also doing the same thing wherever they are. So, to be a part of a team, you have to control your part of the battle that you can control, and then you have to trust that others will do the same.
All right, so this last segment, just overall conclusion. This question just wraps everything up and just kind of like gets to know Dave and what his experience was playing football for Lima Bath. So Dave, if you could take away one thing from playing football for Bath High School, what would it be?
Football's a great game, and it makes a lot of memories, but that's what they are. They're memories, you take them with you, you enjoy reminiscing and things, but you don't let that become who you are. There's a lot of people that never get over it, never move on. And you need to take the experience that you've had and the fun that you've had, and you need to treasure those memories, but you need to move on to the next segment of your life. That's really important. Take the things you learned, the fun that you had, but move on. That's what I would say is the next thing.
All right, well, I appreciate your time, Dave. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, what's wrong with
Don't drop here. It's a PC.
Yeah.